Vijnanakit, the functions or activities of consciousness in Buddhist philosophy. It encompasses the various ways in which consciousness operates and interacts with mental and sensory phenomena. These functions are fundamental to understanding the nature of consciousness and its role in shaping our experiences and behavior. In Buddhist psychology, Vijnanakit is often categorized into different aspects or functions, which include Patissanti, the process of relinking or rebirth linking, in the context of the cycle of birth, death, and rebirth samsara. Patissanti is the moment when consciousness becomes connected to a new physical body, marking the beginning of a new life. It's seen as a continuous process, where consciousness passes from one existence to another, influenced by karma, actions from previous lives. This understanding of Patissanti is fundamental to understanding the Buddhist perspective on rebirth and the nature of existence. Pavanka, life continuum or factor of being. Pavanka represents the underlying continuity of consciousness that persists from one moment to the next within an individual life. When the mind is not engaged in active cognitive processes, such as during deep sleep or in a state of unconsciousness, the Pavanka consciousness flows uninterrupted, maintaining the continuity of the individual's existence. It's described as a subtle and passive state of consciousness, devoid of active mental activities or awareness of external stimuli. In the process of rebirth, Pavanka plays a crucial role. It's believed that, at the moment of death, the Pavanka consciousness continues uninterrupted until it becomes disrupted by a new sensory stimulus, which then triggers the arising of consciousness in a new existence. This transition from one life to another is part of the cyclical process of samsara. Understanding Pavanka helps practitioners comprehend the continuous flow of consciousness and its role in the cycle of birth, death, and rebirth. Within the framework of Buddhist philosophy, avocana, the initial moment of cognitive awareness or apprehending. It's often translated as adverting or apprehending. When a sensory object makes contact with one of the sense faculties, such as the eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, or mind, avocana is the mental process of turning towards or attending to that object. It's the moment when consciousness becomes aware of the sensory input and begins to process it. Avocana is considered the first stage in the cognitive process. According to the Abhidhamma teachings, after avocana, the mind proceeds to the next stages of cognitive processing, which involve recognition, perception, and conceptualization of the sensory input. Understanding avocana is important in Buddhist psychology and meditation practice because it highlights the importance of mindful awareness of sensory experiences as they arise. By cultivating awareness at the level of avocana, practitioners can gain insight into the nature of sensory perception and develop greater mindfulness and clarity of mind. Dasana, seeing in a profound sense, often implying insight or understanding gained through direct perception. It's not merely physical sight, but a deeper understanding or realization. In Buddhist practice, dasana is often associated with vipassana or insight meditation, where practitioners cultivate the ability to see things as they truly are. This kind of seeing involves penetrating insight into the impermanent, unsatisfactory, and selfless nature of all phenomena. As taught in the Buddhas, for noble truths and three marks of existence, dasana is about seeing beyond the surface appearances and recognizing the deeper truths about existence, suffering, and the nature of reality. It's considered a transformative experience that leads to liberation from suffering and the cycle of birth and death samsara. In summary, dasana is not just about physical sight, but about gaining profound insight and understanding into the nature of existence through direct perception or realization. Savana, the process of hearing, but it extends beyond mere auditory perception. It encompasses the act of receiving and cognizing sounds through the ear faculties, but it also involves the mental processing and interpretation of those sounds. Savana is one of the 6 sense faculties in Buddhist teachings, along with sight, smell, taste, touch, and mind. Like the other senses, hearing plays a crucial role in the cognitive processes that shape our perception of the world. However, in a deeper sense, Savana also has spiritual implications in Buddhist practice. In the context of the Noble Eightfold Path, right mindfulness samasati involves being mindful of all sensory experiences, including what is heard. Practitioners are encouraged to be aware of the sounds they encounter, without becoming attached or averse to them, thus cultivating equanimity and insight into the impermanent and ultimately unsatisfactory nature of all phenomena. Furthermore, in the context of Buddhist teachings, hearing the Dharma, the teachings of the Buddha, is considered a crucial aspect of spiritual practice. By listening attentively to the Dharma, practitioners can gain insight, develop wisdom, and progress on the path towards liberation from suffering. So, while Savana encompasses the physical act of hearing, it also extends to the mental processes and spiritual significance associated with auditory perception in Buddhist practice. Gyana, the sense of smelling or olfactory perception, like the other senses, such as sight, hearing, taste, touch, and mind. Smelling plays a significant role in shaping our perception of the world and our experiences within it. In the context of sensory perception, Gyana involves the reception and interpretation of odors or smells through the olfactory faculties. This sensory input contributes to our overall awareness and understanding of our environment. However, in Buddhist practice, sensory experiences, including smelling, are seen as transient and impermanent. Practitioners are encouraged to observe the arising and passing away of smells, without becoming attached or averse to them. This practice cultivates mindfulness and insight into the nature of sensory experiences and their relationship to suffering and the cycle of birth and death samsara. Furthermore, in some Buddhist traditions, smelling can have symbolic or ritualistic significance. For example, incense is often used in Buddhist ceremonies and rituals as an offering to the Triple Gem Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, or as a means of purify the environment. Overall, Gyana encompasses both the physical act of smelling and the spiritual significance associated with olfactory perception in Buddhist philosophy and practice. Solyana, the sense of tasting or gustatory perception, like the other senses, such as sight, hearing, smell, touch, and mind. Tasting plays a significant role in shaping our perception of the world and our experiences within it. Solyana involves the reception and interpretation of flavors through the gustatory faculties. This sensory input contributes to our overall awareness and understanding of the food and beverages we consume. In Buddhist practice, sensory experiences, including tasting, are seen as transient and impermanent. Practitioners are encouraged to observe the arising and passing away of tastes, without becoming attached or averse to them. This practice cultivates mindfulness and insight into the nature of sensory experiences and their relationship to suffering and the cycle of birth and death samsara. Furthermore, in some Buddhist traditions, the act of eating itself can have symbolic or ritualistic significance. For example, during alms rounds or monastic meals, practitioners may practice mindfulness and gratitude while consuming food, recognizing the interdependence and impermanence of all phenomena. Overall, Solyana encompasses both the physical act of tasting and the spiritual significance associated with gustatory perception in Buddhist philosophy and practice. Pusana, the sense of touching or tactile perception. It's the experience of contact between the body and external objects or surfaces, like the other senses, such as sight, hearing, smell, taste, and mind. Touching plays a significant role in shaping our perception of the world and our experiences within it. Pusana involves the reception and interpretation of tactile sensations through the body's sensory faculties. This sensory input contributes to our overall awareness and understanding of the physical environment, including textures, temperatures, and pressures. In Buddhist practice, sensory experiences, including touching, are seen as transient and impermanent. Practitioners are encouraged to observe the arising and passing away of tactile sensations without becoming attached or averse to them. This practice cultivates mindfulness and insight into the nature of sensory experiences and their relationship to suffering and the cycle of birth and death samsara. Furthermore, in some Buddhist traditions, the act of touching can have symbolic or ritualistic significance. For example, in certain meditation practices, practitioners may focus on the sensation of touch as a means of grounding themselves in the present moment and developing mindfulness. Overall, Pusana encompasses both the physical act of touching and the spiritual significance associated with tactile perception in Buddhist philosophy and practice. Sampatian, the mental process of receiving or apprehending sensory stimuli. It's the initial stage of cognitive processing that occurs when sensory input is perceived by the mind. When a sensory object makes contact with one of the sense faculties, such as the eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, or mind, Sampatian is the mental process of receiving that input. It involves the immediate awareness or recognition of the sensory stimulus, without necessarily fully processing or understanding it at that moment. Sampatian is considered one of the first stages in the cognitive process. According to Buddhist teachings, after Sampatian, the mind proceeds to the next stages of cognitive processing, which involve more detailed recognition, perception, and conceptualization of the sensory input. Understanding Sampatian is important in Buddhist psychology and meditation practice because it highlights the initial moment of sensory awareness and the role it plays in shaping our perception of the world. By cultivating mindfulness and awareness of this initial reception of sensory stimuli, practitioners can gain insight into the nature of perception and develop greater clarity of mind. Santirana, the mental process of investigating or examining sensory stimuli. It's a stage in the cognitive process that occurs after the initial reception of sensory input Sampatian and involves a more detailed examination or analysis of that input. When a sensory object is perceived, Santirana is the mental process of investigating or probing the characteristics and qualities of that object. This investigation may involve analyzing the object's form, color, sound, smell, taste, texture, or any other relevant attributes. Santirana is considered an important stage in the development of insight vipassana in Buddhist practice. By investigating sensory experiences with mindfulness and discernment, practitioners can gain deeper understanding into the impermanent, unsatisfactory, and selfless nature of all phenomena. This investigation leads to insight into the true nature of reality and helps to break through the delusions and attachments that cause suffering. In meditation practice, practitioners may cultivate Santirana by observing the arising and passing away of sensory experiences with keen attention and curiosity. By investigating the sensory input without clinging or aversion, practitioners can develop greater clarity of mind and insight into the nature of existence. Vthal, the mental process of determining or deciding upon a course of action. It's a stage in the cognitive process that occurs after the investigation or examination of sensory stimuli Santirana and involves making a judgment or decision based on the information gathered. When faced with sensory input or mental phenomena, Vthal is the mental process of determining how to respond or act in relation to that stimuli. This determination may involve evaluating the situation, considering various factors, and making a decision based on one's understanding, values, and intentions. Vthal is considered an important aspect of mental development and ethical decision-making in Buddhist practice. It involves discernment and wisdom in choosing actions that are skillful kusala and conducive to the well-being and liberation from suffering, rather than unskillful akusala actions that perpetuate suffering and bondage. In meditation practice, practitioners may cultivate Vthal by observing their thoughts, emotions, and intentions with mindfulness and clarity, by discerning the wholesome and unwholesome qualities of their mental states. Practitioners can make skillful determinations about how to respond to their experiences in ways that promote spiritual growth and liberation. Overall, Vthal encompasses the mental process of determining or deciding upon a course of action based on wisdom, discernment, and ethical considerations. In Buddhist philosophy and practice, Jvar, a specific phase of mental activity that occurs during the cognitive process. It's a momentary mental process characterized by apperception and impulsion. Apperception, Jvar, involves the process of apperception, which is the mental recognition or awareness of an object. This includes the recognition of the sensory input and the associated mental states or qualities. Apperception involves not only perceiving the object, but also understanding its significance and implications. Impulsion, Jvar, also involves impulsion, which is the mental impetus or inclination towards a particular response or action based on the perceived object. This impulsion arises as a result of the mental evaluation and assessment of the object's qualities and significance. Jvar occurs in rapid succession and is said to be momentary, with multiple yavana moments happening in a fraction of a second. It's considered one of the most subtle and fundamental aspects of mental activity in Buddhist psychology. In terms of practical application, understanding Jvar is important for practitioners because it sheds light on the continuous flow of mental activity and the role it plays in shaping our experiences and behavior. By observing the Jvar moments with mindfulness and discernment, practitioners can gain insight into the nature of their mind and develop greater control over their thoughts, emotions, and actions. Overall, Jvar encompasses the processes of apperception and impulsion, representing the rapid and momentary mental activity that occurs during the cognitive process in Buddhist psychology. Ttar Lampar, the mental process of retention or registration. It's the stage in the cognitive process where sensory stimuli or mental objects are retained or imprinted in the mind for a future reference or recall. When a sensory object is perceived or a mental state arises, Ttar Lampar is the mental process of registering or storing that information in memory. This process allows for the retention of sensory impressions, thoughts, emotions, and other mental phenomena, making them available for subsequent recollection and reflection. Ttar Lampar is considered an important aspect of mental functioning because it enables learning, memory, and the development of cognitive abilities. By retaining past experiences and knowledge, individuals can draw upon them to inform their understanding of the world and guide their behavior in the present moment. In meditation practice, practitioners may cultivate Ttar Lampar by observing their experiences with mindfulness and clarity, allowing sensory impressions and mental phenomena to be registered in consciousness without attachment or aversion. By developing greater awareness of the process of retention, practitioners can gain insight into the nature of memory and the impermanent nature of all phenomena. Overall, Ttar Lampar encompasses the mental process of retention or registration, enabling the storage and recall of sensory impressions, thoughts, and other mental phenomena in Buddhist psychology and practice. Duty, the process of decease or death, specifically the moment when consciousness departs from the physical body. It marks the end of one's current existence and the transition to the next phase, whether that be rebirth into a new form of existence or the attainment of nirvana, depending on one's karmic conditions and spiritual development. Duty is viewed as a natural and inevitable part of the cycle of birth, death, and rebirth samsara. It is understood that all beings, whether human or otherwise, will experience death eventually, as it is inherent in the nature of conditioned existence. However, in Buddhism, death is not seen as the end of consciousness or existence, but rather as a transition to another state, depending on one's karma actions accumulated throughout life. Consciousness may continue on to a new existence through the process of rebirth, perpetuating the cycle of samsara. Alternatively, if one has attained enlightenment nirvana, death represents the final liberation from the cycle of birth and death. Understanding duty is important in Buddhist practice, as it serves as a reminder of the impermanent and transient nature of life. It encourages practitioners to cultivate mindfulness, wisdom, and compassion, recognizing the fragility and preciousness of existence. By contemplating the reality of death, practitioners can deepen their understanding of the nature of suffering and the importance of spiritual practice in attaining liberation from the cycle of samsara. Overall, duty encompasses the process of decease or death, marking the transition from one phase of existence to another. In Buddhist philosophy and practice, these functions represent the dynamic and interactive nature of consciousness. In shaping our perception, cognition, and behavior, they highlight the active role of consciousness in processing sensory input, making sense of our experiences, and guiding our actions in the world. Understanding Vthal is important in Buddhist practice, as it sheds light on the workings of the mind and provides insight into the nature of consciousness and its relationship to suffering and liberation. By cultivating mindfulness and awareness of these functions, practitioners can gain greater control over their mental processes and develop wisdom and insight into the nature of reality.